2 years ago, while I was campaigning for this Senate seat, I became pregnant with what we later determined was a non-viable pregnancy. It was a pregnancy that we had been trying for, and we were heartbroken over it. But now, I wish I could tell you otherwise, but after numerous ultrasounds and blood draws, we have determined that my pregnancy is once again not progressing and is not viable. And once again, I have scheduled an appointment to terminate my pregnancy. I don't think people should have to justify their abortions, but I'm choosing to talk about why I made this decision because I want us to be able to have meaningful conversations about the reality of how the work that we do in this body impacts people in the real world.
An Arizona lawmaker got personal on the State House floor on Monday, telling her colleagues she was pregnant or is pregnant with a baby who will not survive. She described the multiple blood tests confirming her doctor's diagnosis, the clinic that forced an invasive transvaginal ultrasound that neither she nor her doctor wanted, and what she called painful conversations about abortion alternatives, as if her baby would survive when she knew that was impossible. Everything that women now have to go through in the state of Arizona to get an abortion before 15 weeks. Experiences she called cruel. Joining us now, Linda Dee and Timothy J. O'Neill, professor of constitutional law and global health policy at Georgetown Law School and author of Policing the Womb, Invisible Women and the Criminalization of Motherhood, Michelle Goodwin. Michelle, it's really good to have you. This is clearly very difficult for her, and we're told some Republican lawmakers in that state house left as she was saying it. What is the point that she's getting across here?
Well, she's humanizing an experience that far too often amongst those who are anti-abortion seek to turn away from. Just as you were mentioning, colleagues in that chamber leaving as she was talking about it, the real world implications of what it means to be pregnant, something that's been divorced from the abortion bans, from lawmakers who want to ban abortion, and even from our Supreme Court. What she's speaking to is something that the Supreme Court in 2016 actually acknowledged, which is that a woman is 14 times more likely to die carrying a pregnancy to term than by having an abortion. Roughly about 20% of pregnancies, 20 to 30%, will not result in the delivery of a child, even for people who want that experience because of miscarriage and stillbirth. What she's relating to is that there's a kind of falsehood that every conception, every pregnancy ends in a birth, a perfect birth. And that just simply isn't the reality. And it hasn't been since there ever been human beings on this planet.
And is she also trying to say that every abortion is not an abortion because someone just didn't want the baby? Abortions come for all different reasons.
Well, that's absolutely right. I mean, part of the strategy that is, she's telling a heartfelt story. She's delivering a story that she shouldn't have to. And for those who are coming forward in those stories, they're really trying to help dispel what have been some of the stereotypes, the stigmas associated with pregnancy stories that lead to abortion, including the fact that here are irresponsible women, women who engaged in sex when they, should have been more careful. She's telling a story like so many others we've heard from Texas, Tennessee, and other states. People who otherwise wanted their pregnancy. She wasn't trying to get pregnant. She's a mother of two. She was surprised by this pregnancy, but she's had a miscarriage before. And she's trying to tell a story about people who want to have a pregnancy who yet still won't necessarily survive a pregnancy, or the fetus that they're gestating will not necessarily survive the pregnancy either. And she's trying to normalize that story. She's trying to humanize it because we've become so far removed from the realities, the scientific, the health realities, the human rights realities, too, of pregnancy.
How do you see this? I know Democrats are really relying on this being a motivating issue in November. And they see this as something that they can make, they can force change on if Biden gets a second term. What could Biden do in his second term?
That's a really good question. If Biden is reelected in a second term, what may actually happen is that there may be Republicans who turn back to old guard Republicanism as it relates to pregnancy. Let's remember Roe v. Wade was a 7-2 opinion. 5 of those 7 justices were Republican appointed. The justice who wrote the opinion in Roe, Justice Blackmun, was put on the court by Richard Nixon. In Planned Parenthood v. Casey, you have Justices O'Connor and Kennedy, both Republican appointed, that further reaffirm Roe v. Wade. Even to think about the former president, George H.W. Bush, when he helped to instantiate Title X, which provides reproductive health care for the poorest of Americans, he said, this is just basic health care. Nixon agreed, and his father, Prescott Bush, was the treasurer for Planned Parenthood. So one possibility is that with a second Biden term, it actually may turn Republicans who thought that this is a winning issue to realize that it's not. Let women control their own reproductive health care, much in the same way that the old guard Republicans understood and appreciated decades ago.
That's a really interesting point. Michelle Goodwin, thank you very much.